We return to our guest, Tim Donner, Liberty Nation's senior political analyst. When we see things like that, we see a public execution of a beloved figure in Iran and three young people in the middle of this war after it being really obliterated by our military. Where does the left lose or even some on the right, where are they missing the message that this is an evil regime? I know part of your article talked about how they're evil, but why is
Yes,
there a but?
you build an argument against what's being done. So it's a sort of a common tactic, but there's some basic arguments they made. The first one was that they didn't inform the Congress in advance and that they didn't get specific congressional approval. There was no formal declaration of war, and the Democrats ran out that argument for a long time and now sort of quietly dropping it. But, it flies in the face of the reality that Congress has not declared war since 1942.
Right.
And the Democrats know it. But they continue that argument because it's what I call a WIT argument, whatever it takes to oppose Trump. On top of that, I think everybody could agree that that remarkable strike that took out the Ayatollah
Right.
and his interior ministers, um, that strike was brilliantly executed, but it was something that required absolute secrecy. The idea that there's no imminent threat. So if you cut through all of okay, well, they didn't call up Trump and say, we're going to drop a nuclear bomb on you tomorrow. Yes, that's true. But what they're really saying, if you think about it, is let's wait until they really do have a nuclear bomb and they really do threaten us. And it's a specific threat that we can respond to as an emergency. Is that a better plan? Not when every president and both parties have for decades talked about the need to get rid of this Iranian regime. And might I say, the Democrats were very much in favor of it themselves, though they did nothing about it except make deals with that regime. But I mean, when there was no political stakes involved, the Democrats consistently said it's an evil regime that needs to go until Trump came in. And then it's an evil regime, but they're not an imminent threat. The way they are massaging the language to make it seem like the Iranian regime isn't as palpably evil as it is. This war has probably been more predictable than most anyone I've seen because they followed the script: secure the seas, secure the air, and then get rid of all the people who were perpetrating this evil and have enslaved the Iranian people for almost 50 years.
Which throws out the argument that he didn't have a plan or a strategy, because clearly
See, I don't get that one at all. I mean,
I
it
don't
seems
either.
like a clear plan, a clear strategy, and a clear exit strategy, which is when he's satisfied, and he's going to have to be satisfied because countless billions of dollars and even at this point, 10 American lives have been lost in this effort.
Right.
So the end game has to be when Trump is convinced, along with his military advisors, that Iran is no longer a threat
Right.
beyond their borders.
Right. And he's had this in his head since 1980. We've all, or at least since 1980, 1979, we've all seen that video that surfaced of an interview he did in October of 1980. It's not like he's wavered. It's not like he's changed his mind. The whole argument of a bait and switch is also out the window. He's been dedicated to this one thing, which is ridding the earth of this evil regime. The importance of annihilating the enemy and making sure that the job is finished. These Islamic jihadists have a maniacal mentality, really diabolical. It's not something that you're not dealing with a typical enemy. So even if we have or if Iran has a legitimate democratic election and chooses their own leader, will they likely go underground and reboot, redesign, resurface? It's biblical and historical to just completely destroy the enemy so that that doesn't happen. What kind of security can we have that he really has, the US has really destroyed this enemy?
Well, I mean, Donald Trump, whether by intent or not, is following the biblical imperative to show them no mercy. When you establish that somebody is evil and opposed to all that is good and decent and excellent and humane, that those people, especially when you consider that they have enslaved 90 million people in Iran, these people have to be eliminated, plain and simple.
Right,
You can't try to convince them to change because they
right.
won't change. And the thing that makes them more dangerous than anything else, Michelle, is that they have a very different view of death and they
Mhm.
believe in dying for the cause. They believe in martyrdom. They believe in jihad. And when you're dealing with an enemy that does not value human life to the same degree that we do in Western civilization, then that's what you call an asymmetrical war.
How did we come so far from the US recognizing Hitler needed to be eliminated to America not recognizing that the Iranian regime has to be eliminated?
I think if you could administer truth serum to Chuck, to Chuck Schumer and Dick Durbin and the other Democratic leaders, I would bet a good amount of money, maybe even the mortgage, on the fact that they would say, yes, we've got to get rid of these people. And we've been needing to do it for a long time. But Trump's the only one with the guts to do it.
Right,
And now, look, it's not like it was easy for previous presidents, but he's gone to the other extreme of Barack Obama, who tried
right,
to appease Iran and simply delay the creation of a uh, nuclear annihilation or the prospect of it. And, he tried to buy them off with Bale's billions of dollars in cash
right.
that was carted off in the middle of the night secretly. I mean, this is the opposite approach, which is instead of recognizing them as a regional power and deferring to that, like Barack Obama, uh, Trump is saying they are a menace to the civilized world and must be eliminated.
Let's talk about the Strait of Hormuz because that has been the biggest thorn for the last 3 weeks and keeping it secure. He's chided NATO countries for not doing anything. Last week, he even talked about them not having the courage to do anything. And some of the NATO countries, the Baltic states, are experienced and are actually active in minesweeping in the Baltic Sea from World War II remnants. So why aren't these countries coming forward? They have more minesweepers than the US does, and they could help with securing and opening up the Strait of Hormuz.
Europe always chickens out because they know in the end that the United States will be their protector, that we have an overwhelming military force, and they have internal domestic problems with anti war factions and parties. And this is what Trump has said for years. And this is why he made such a point of demanding 2% and then
Right.
later in the second term, 5%
5%. Hmm.
of the GDP of NATO members to be spent on defense. And they're not there yet, but it is going up. Of course, the fact that there's a raging ground war just to the east of them has a
Right.
lot to do with that. Trump has shamed them in a way that no other president was willing to do. And of course, all the establishment types are all up in, oh, our traditional allies. And well, an alliance, it seems to me, goes two ways.
The UK didn't come to help or even assist, and then after we were winning, decided they were going to help. He basically said, "No,
Yes.
thanks. We don't need you." So,
Bandwagon jumpers.
right. He did have a phone call with Starmer. At the time of this recording, it was last night, and he also posted an SNL skit that was mocking Starmer. I don't know which happened first, the phone call or the post. But how do you think that colored the conversation? And do you think that there's a connection between the talks with the UK and the talks with Iran?
And the Saturday Night Live
And the
skit.
Saturday Night Live skit.
A lot of this depends on the sense of humor of the men involved. And if there's one thing you can say about Donald Trump, he's got a very good sense of humor. He
Yes,
appreciates a good joke. He loves joshing people. He loves busting, ribbing people.
yes,
So, and he doesn't figure he should be very different than that as a president, except to the
right,
extent that he needs to be for diplomatic purposes that serve the needs of the United States and its people. So um, I don't know. Starmer's in huge trouble. He's wildly unpopular in the
right,
UK. So is Macron in France. The trouble with NATO and the trouble with the EU is they have no leadership. There is no Margaret Thatcher. There's not
right.
even an Angela Merkel or a strong British prime minister like even a John Major or a Tony Blair. So, you know, without leadership, they are what they appear to be, which is, a whole bunch of distinct countries with different cultures pretending that they want to get along with each other for the sake of money.
Tim Donner, thank you so much. You have been always a wealth of information. I really enjoyed speaking with you today. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Michelle. It's been a pleasure.
And that's all we have time for on this week's edition of Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I've been your host, Michelle White. I'd like to thank our guests today, Tim Donner and Andrew Moran. And I'd like to thank you, the audience, for taking the time each week to tune in here and join us on the Radio America Network. Please remember, Liberty Nation does not endorse candidates, campaigns, or legislation, and this presentation is no endorsement.